amazing floor show as well. So I'm going to hand over to Peter now.
I first learnt about gravity when I was a lineman, and I'll let your imagination work on that, but it involves some height and falling. And much later in my life I discovered that of all the forces in the universe, gravity is the least insignificant. It's so insignificant compared to everything else. It's very, very poor but can't be neglected. So I suffered in my education system by people opening a book and reciting what was in it. And I didn't learn anything. And the way I got into this stuff was by engineering and building things and science. And my contention is that there are two ways that you really learn about stuff. One is trying to teach, because you're trying to communicate it, but the other one is trying to build something and get it to work. And my favorite expression in the research lab is, huh? What? It's not supposed to be doing this. And all my life's had a lot of huh in it. And it's just really difficult sometimes to get the books to tie up with what you're seeing. And you'd be surprised how many times the books are wrong because the person who read the book never did the experiment. And that's always a revelation. So we've got here a mixed group of people. There are folks in here who've had 50 years of engineering life, but have forgotten about thermodynamics. There are some PhDs in the audience who are here with the sole purpose of trying to trip me up at some point. And then there are lots of young people who are grappling with this stuff. And what I want to do is try and get into your minds all the basics and where it leads. And the big problem is people understand the basics, you put a problem in front of them and they forget those things, and they enter a new Cinderella world where Harry Potter rules and energy is magic and all that kind of stuff. And it's not true. So we're going to start by this guy. I was taught this, I've never been able to confirm it, but this guy was quite a genius. He made contributions to science on a vast scale. But when it came to entropy, not many people would talk to him or indeed believe him. So on a family holiday, he went out and hung himself in despair, was the story. I've never been able to confirm that, but it's a great story. And when you go into industry, you have many days like that, but don't resort to a rope, okay? So this is our mission, to understand. And there's a big problem. Around about the Reformation, we stopped thinking holistically and started to put people in boxes. And boxes are great for accelerating knowledge. If you're a physicist, you do just physics and it's brilliant. You learn a lot. But what happens is physics then becomes astrophysics and nuclear physics, and you become more or less a delta function. You know an infinite amount about not very much. And then when you're presented with a problem that's multidisciplinary, you find yourself struggling. And so this is a problem we've got to try and break down. So I'm going to talk to you guys and girls, and you coming from all kinds of different backgrounds, and what I want from you is to say, is this an improvement on the way you've been educated in the past? Because one of my missions here is to change the way we teach engineering and science, and two, the way we do research and development. And so this is an experiment, one of about 3 or 4, and we'll see what happens. This subject can't be boxed. You cannot say thermodynamics, it sits here, we'll learn all about thermodynamics and we know it. It doesn't do that. Thermodynamics is the closest we've got to a grand unified theory. This is it. And it is so damn simple at a basic level, you will think I'm taking the mickey. But I'm going to do some demonstrations in a moment. And this is the problem. People go to school and they put that in a box, and they come into industry and they're given a new box and they don't relate the two. So I'm going to show you a shed load of stuff that you understand and know, but you will forget. So we'll start off with, something that's very simple. You would not expect that ball to keep bouncing at the same height. As it hits, You hear the sound, insignificant amount of energy. Heat is lost. The elasticity of the polymers in here is stretched. The energy is dissipated. So energy always dissipates. It's never sustained. I'm going to put this ball on the floor, and I want to watch. And should it decide to jump up onto the desk at some point, let me know, okay? Because it'll be a world first. There's a natural tendency for things to dissipate. And see if I can blow this extra strong balloon up a bit. Now, I've just put some energy in here, and the energy is really uncomfortable because it wants to be everywhere else. The air's concentrated and it's gagging to escape. And so when I take my finger off, it disappears, and that energy is dissipated in the room. That happens all the time. Now, this is where the site services fire brigade turn up. The reason why I'm doing all this will become clear in a moment. This one is highly unlikely to burst into flame. To get that sucker to burn, I've had to put a lot of energy in. And that energy is going to be dissipated by the burning through the wax, and it will just all dissipate, and ultimately it will go out. It will die, which is exactly what's happening to our universe, only a bit slower. So, this has got a given entropy, and I want to increase its entropy a little bit. It's now got a lot more entropy. In fact, the entropy is directly related to the amount that I whacked it, okay? So, should this glass reassemble, let me know, but I'll put it on its side. Now, there are other weird things that happen, and I want to give you an example. Yeah, I got too much entropy there, too excited. Thank you. There are things that happen in this universe that beg a belief, and you have to think about them. But first of all, you would be amazed if that didn't happen. You'd be even more amazed if that shot back up and popped out here. It wouldn't. Now, I have to tell you something that most people will never come across, and it comes in my discipline of telecommunications. I put information in order 1, 2, 3, but it comes out 2, 3, 1. So in networks, we can put information in with a given entropy, and when it arrives at the other end of the planet, it's got an entirely different entropy because it's been reordered by the network. And this stuff takes you by surprise. Now, there are equally weird things happening in quantum mechanics at the bottom end, and I have to say that this stuff doesn't entirely fit the quantum mechanical world. There are some weird things happen and some exceptions. So,
I'm slightly baffled by that. Is that the packet switcher?
yes, that's one example, but there are many more. Yeah, and social networks are another example. We have no way of modelling them, and it's weird. So, if I knock this over, I'm in deep trouble, because this one's hot. Slight snafu, I forgot to bring some cold water, never mind. That's at 62 degrees. During the course of this talk, that ain't going to go up, it's going to go down. If I'd have remembered to bring the cold water wouldn't have got any hotter. What is happening here, the energy in these atoms, they're vibrating away and it's dissipating. And during the course of this talk, it wants to get down to room temperature. This is all blinking obvious. Now, what is more difficult, and when we do it with mathematics, is I'll get this into a minimum entropy state. They're clustered together. These are air gun pellets, they're all the same. Now the entropy's gone up. I put energy in, they're redistributed, but because they're all identical, it doesn't matter where they land. But in the world of information and the world of chemistry, it gets much messier. Now, I've got two kinds of particle, molecule, and each time the distribution is different. So on each occasion, when I put energy in, the entropy is entirely different. So part of doing the mathematics is you take a macro system and it's sort of impossible to model. And so you take a micro system of it that's representative of the whole. Metaphorically, you give it a shape, you work out the probability of the distribution, you get the entropy, then you apply it to the whole. That's what's coming up. That's what they don't tell you at school. They throw a blinking equation at you and you just go, what? I don't get that. But that's basically what's happening. So just to be absolutely clear, I'm putting energy in. The sound is insignificant. The heat in there, the collisions, is where the energy is. So it's slightly warming up. The minimum entropy state will be something like that, where they're all packed tightly together. So something like water has got a much lower entropy than something like a gas. And so those are the, don't forget that, all right? Don't just remember all this stuff. Don't go to sleep and forget it, because that's what people do. And they do it on a rather wonderful scale by inventing free energy. Free energy is a thriving investment market. The bankers are throwing millions at this stuff. There are people out there with 4 megawatt perpetual motion machines. Here's the punchline with the flywheel. Okay, and the bankers come in and they do a demo, give them some scientific gobbledygook, they throw a couple of million in, and you get project proposals like that. This one actually works. It's not bad. It's got a magnet, and the falling ball pushes the wheel round. It's terrific. That guy up there is a complete charlatan. You know, 3 cores with some coil round it doesn't work. Somewhere he's either inducting energy into those cores or he's got a wire up his sleeve or something, but he's a charlatan. This guy's just an idiot. And this guy is really trying very hard, but has overlooked the fact that as this works, this magnet's going to get tired. And what actually happens, if you put a load on here and take energy out, this magnet gets really tired and it stops working real fast. But it's sufficient to get the bankers to part with some money. And every time I go to see a perpetual motion machine, it's not working this week, you know, or something like that. It's this sort of conundrum. So, and what's happened here is people have done physics, they've even done A-level physics, and they forgot that energy gets dissipated somewhere. So this is all interesting. If you go on YouTube, there's just dozens of people saying that they've got free energy, and I can assure you they haven't. So this is my perpetual motion machine, and all of these systems boil down to this, you know. Sort of, what's wrong? Well, let me take you for a coffee and I'll tell you why it's not going to work. And it's difficult to convince people because they're in a belief loop. They really, it's obvious they can do it, but it's not quite there yet. So I ask interesting questions like, okay, Harry Potter, how much energy is going down your arm and through that stick? And is it feasible? So, you know, energy is not magic. There's always a price to pay. You can never have 100% efficiency. So I ask the question, how much energy would it take, Harry, to levitate a human being? Now, it's about 1 kilowatt if he grabs hold of them, and it's about 10 kilowatt at 1 meter. And then at 20 meters, he needs about 4 megawatts. This is roughly half of size will be is going down his right arm. Now, I mean, it's going to be burnt to a bloody cinder. It can't possibly, unless there's some new energy that we don't know about, it's impossible. and even more so for this. So I've made a few assumptions on the size, and he needs mega, it's another sizable B kind of arm you need. And he's just thinking it, he's 400 megawatts is coming out of his brain and lifting this spaceship to, really? That's a hell of a brain. I've got a 60-watt light bulb in here, that's it. That's all the energy that reaches my brain. On a really bad day, I may be burning 100 watts in here, but I'm not powered by a sizable B. I would become a plasma instantly. I would be ripped to pieces. It's on that sort of scale. So I thought I'd do a 30-second description of the whole of thermodynamics. Jane hates this. My wife's here, and she always balks at this, but because you've got such great backgrounds, you'll get it. So here we are. We're all in a game, and there's no escape. We have to play the game. We cannot opt out. And there's some bad news. There is no way we can win this game. The best we can hope for is that we can break even. That's the best we can do. We can break even. But we can only break even on a very cold day. The snag is, it never gets that damn cold. We are stuffed by entropy. It's what kills us. It's God's celestial ratchet. It will terminate us, all animals, all life form, the universe. It just goes up. So this is the origins. Interestingly, not unlike a lot of topics, for example in mathematics, probability theory came out of the gaming tables of Russia and places like that trying to beat the house. This is really demanded by industry very early on. And it is a one theory fits all. It's a unified set of observations that work at many levels. It was beyond general relativity. It was Einstein's favorite. So he thought it was so impressive. Now, this is where we came from, and there's lots of mysticism. The ancient Greeks even turned it into a weapon. They made flamethrowers and stuff with no idea how fire worked. No idea. So the impressive figures are, just look at the amount of material for about 5 horsepower at 10% efficiency extracted from a stream or a river. So this is the start of a revolution. But how big a wheel? What shape blades? Overflow, underflow? You've got no idea. So when the medieval monks built these initial water mills, one of them made one and it worked, and then all these buddies downstream started to build them, and what happened was they ran out of energy. They took all the energy out of the river with no knowledge of why. And so this is a recurring theme that went to steam engines, belt drives, energy distribution, everything. So to give you an idea, the national grid feeding our homes with power consumes about 2 nuclear power stations worth of resistive loss. So to get the energy to our house, before we even use it, there's a couple of nuclear power stations just heating up the cables. And it's took a long while, but what is fantastic to my mind is that so early on, we got people who were, with the crudest of models, able to more or less perfect turbines, and this thing is still used today. You have to think in terms of no computers. This was a world of logarithm tables and slide rules and intuition and that kind of stuff. If you've ever been to see a beam engine, you've got several hundred tons of metal for an absolutely puny output of about 30 brake horsepower at less than 15% efficiency. And I'm doing this to just put it in perspective. We knew nothing about how much energy you could get out of a fuel. You know, people started to realize that coal was much better than wood and oil was better than coal. But it took a while. What pressure, size of piston, people just built stuff, and this is what happened. It was like, whoops. If you don't know anything, you go around killing folks. You know, so this is the other side of the coin. You can build aeroplanes, but you don't want them to fall out of the sky. You can build steam engines, but you don't want them to blow up. So, you know, any fool can build this stuff, but it takes some science engineering to build good and efficient and safe machines. So, a perspective. This is a cotton mill up in Lancashire. It's a museum, and it's got belt drives and old steam engine, and that's how the energy is distributed. But about 30 brake horsepower, you know, it's not very much. Then you jump in your car and you've got 200 or 300 brake horsepower that you can not quite pick up. What's really impressive is next time you go and fly, you get the latest jet turbines, 100,000 brake horsepower, and they're about 95% efficient. And the blades in this burner in here are hollow, and they have to pump cooling fluid through the blades to stop them melting, because they're operating several degrees above melt temperature. What I'm going to reveal shortly is the only thing that dictates the energy of a machine is the ambient temperature and the top temperature. So you're always striving to get as much temperature difference as you can. So another perspective, the Titanic, a miracle in its time, 50,000 brake horsepower. Let's just scroll back one, 100,000 brake horsepower. 50,000 brake horsepower, it was consuming 825 tons a day of coal, and it had got, 6 boilers and 72 furnaces, and it was just a phenomenal amount of material, manpower, and we'll get nothing for it. And so this is where it really came in. All our transport and all our military efforts came down very quickly to we must be able to understand and optimize, and that's where the thermodynamics started. That was the point. So we've gone from riding a horse to walking on the moon in 200 years, and riding a train to riding a rocket in 100. That's phenomenal. And I have this terrible feeling I was born too early, because it's just starting to get fun. So this cracks me up. This is a typical Englishman. Each one of those jet engines that he's got on his arm is more powerful than your car engine. Yeah, exactly. Really? And so he broke the world record. He had a lot of accidents on the way. It's worth watching all his accidents. We haven't got time. We had some spectacular accidents. The trick is he stands with his arms out, fires up, and as he brings his arms down, up he goes. And he just leans forward and away. And getting that right is kind of tricky, as you'll see if you look for the accidents.
I learned to windsurf on that lake.
Did you? So the run-up to all of this, they've got some pretty eminent names, and these guys are in a world of nice, linear, simple, understandable mathematics. Everything works. It's linear, it's well behaved. We are in a world of turbulence and chaos where the mathematics doesn't work, and we're doing approximations, and we're having to throw vast computing power at the problems to do the optimization. Yes, the mathematics and the basic models can give us a hint, but we get a lot of situations where turbulent flow causes a lot of grief, and it's kind of tricky. So they're all the laws that you understand, and they're obvious. You know, I mean, it is not rocket science. It's all what we observe. They formalized it, and this is one of the probably one of the least known heroes of the time, Sadi Carnot, he came up with this cycle, and this hole in the middle, this hysteresis, is where the inefficiency is. And once you start to get your brain around that, and this is for a piston engine, you really start to get inside. And then we get these names. Einstein regarded this guy as a genius, an absolute genius. Every one of these guys worked across at least 4 or 5 disciplines, including biology. They weren't stuck in a box. They were fairly free-ranging. But they all proved and stated the first and second laws of thermodynamics. They even started to teach entropy, and the ideas were formulated. It was very contentious at the time. There was still people arguing that this was rubbish, and they took a lot of grief. But it sort of started to come together, and Boltzmann put this formula together, which is delightfully simple and delightfully difficult to derive. And he started to bring together the whole science, and that's really what he's famous for, but it applies to everything. It applies to just about everything. So, any chemists in the audience? No chemists, okay. Oh, yes, of course, sorry. In chemistry, there's a point of a reaction point where things make a phase change, and it happens suddenly. It's like water turning to ice or water turning to steam. It's a transition, and entropy, and another term, enthalpy. Enthalpy is the total energy in the system, and entropy is the way the energy is distributed. Nothing has escaped, but it's been distributed in a new way. So entropy is about the way we spread out the energy. So this glass in here that's broken has got an entropy. If I picked up the box and threw all the shards all over the room, the entropy would go up. And what people like to do, and it causes some contention, is think of order and disorder. I like order and disorder because I work in the sphere of information and data and computer science and stuff, and there it works well. But the purists who come from an entirely thermal background get a bit upset. So just to be clear, as you wiggle the temperature up and down, molecules or atoms bounce around and do stuff. It's quite clear that if you've got hot water, the molecules are moving, because you could put a drop of dye in it, it does that. In a cold water, it doesn't move very much. And all of this is obvious. So let me just restate this. Information and communications have been totally transformed by this stuff. 1948, Shannon took these principles and created information theory, and from that we were able to design things that are really very efficient in terms of information storage and information transport. So when you see Shannon theory, it's always applied to information transmission, but actually it's also applied to information storage. So let's go with a little bit of a statement. This was a law 0, was put in way after the formulation of the 3 laws. And it's it falls into the category of bleeding obvious, but that's the way it is. But if you get a couple of things in thermal equilibrium with a third, then they're all in equilibrium. This defines temperature, and it defines why stuff flows from a high temperature to a low temperature, or from a high gradient to a low gradient. When I pick this ball up, I'm putting energy into it. It always wants to go to the point of least energy, which is actually on the floor. And if we took the floor out, it would keep going. So all physical systems go to least energy, including us. The first law is not quite right when we get to a quantum world. Okay, so if you do quantum mechanics, stuff goes weird. So, and that's not the subject of this evening, but it could be if there was demand for it, because that's a fun area too. And so, as temperature goes down towards absolute zero, entropy does a nosedive, and if you've got a perfect crystal, entropy actually goes down to zero. But if you've got any other solid, then it won't quite be, but it'll be pretty damn low. So all of this can be tested, and we've tested most of it by experience, and it's the most complete view we've got. And so if you get a bowl of cold water and you pour in some hot water, you can just see it go spread all over the place. Energy always wants to dissipate. It just wants to spread out. It's the natural order of the universe. So I'm going to start here. And how many people are pretty good on maths, and how many people are starting to get worried now because there's an equation up on the board? You know? Okay. The thing is, don't panic. Mathematics is only a language, exactly like a foreign language, but it's the way to know the nomenclature to just describe things in a shorthand form, and the essence of it is to solve a problem once and never have to solve it ever again. We try to solve problems in general cases so that when the next time something like that pops up, we can crack it. So it's just the nomenclature has been chosen by other people and not me, but we could do this. Let me just try something on you. When I was at university, I had mathematics for the 5 years of the course, and the maths guy refused to use dy dx. And he always said, "de thing, de junk." He would never say dy dx, because what happens is when people see a dollar sign and time or energy and space in a differential equation, they freak out because it's not y and x. You can differentiate and integrate anything, but the way people get sucked down this funnel is they keep getting one kind of format. And so this thing is just saying that the internal energy is this bit, the heat output input is that bit, and the work done is that bit. And it relies on something that we can't prove or disprove 100%. So we rely on the fact that the total mass and energy in the universe is constant. And as far as we can tell, it is. And it might be that the matter leaving through black holes is coming back in wormholes, but we have no means of measuring it. But as far as we're concerned on this planet, with the job that we've got to do, all of this stuff works. And the hiatus is we don't have the instrumentation yet, or the technology to prove or disprove this. And so in true scientific mode, we put it on one side for a bit. So another example of this is stem cells. Nobody has a blind clue how stem cells work, but they do work. So my favorite for students is we were brilliant at killing each other with bows and arrows long before Newton came along and told us all about ballistics. One day this might get cleared up, but for now we have to put a cap on it, and we have to say we will just concentrate on the results and what we can actually achieve. So I've got a couple more little demos that I'm not going to actually do. They're a bit messy, but this is the stuff the purists like, and they get so orgasmic about it and so upset about anybody doing anything different. Being an engineer, I have no problem bastardizing anything, because I'm looking for tools that will allow me to do my job, to solve the problems. And so we have to think a little bit like this. So here's a society, if you like, that plods along, and it's a village, and nobody goes anywhere, and the village gets a bit bigger, and all of a sudden a number of villages spread out, and the entropy of the population starts to get bigger, and then you go fast forward a few thousand years, and you find us doing this, where we're physically traveling, and all our devices are traveling, and the entropic value now in our society is huge. Net result is we're burning more energy. Okay, so and there's no way out of it. So this is an order to disorder situation. It goes with temperature and energy, and when we go to information theory, clearly, as we go along here, the amount of information is going up quite quickly, and the disorder is over on the right-hand side, and so the information goes up like that. So there's a real problem, you know. Sometimes engineers run into the scientific community with a bit of a bang, and the reason is it's quite admissible for the physicists and the biologists and the chemists and the mathematicians to declare that there's no solution to a problem. But we don't have that luxury in engineering. We've got to fix the problem. We've got to find a solution, and we will use any approximation and method, and the full knowledge very often comes along later. I've ranged across a lot of different disciplines in my life purposely because I've refused to specialize. And so I am now employed because I can go into a company with 6 different disciplines on a project that are not really communicating very well, and I can range over that and I can get a handle on it. And it's really kind of interesting when you get into that situation. So this is one of my favorite bits of movie, but here comes a bullet, American movie, and of course we've gone from order to disorder. This is time's arrow, or the arrow of time. If ever you see a bullet reversing towards the gun and passing through a glass that reorganizes itself, it's a winner. We just don't see that. Now theoretically, the theoretical physicists are pretty sure that on our side of the 11-dimensional space, there's another set of spaces where everything is mirrored in the opposite direction. That is going to be a very interesting world. Mathematically okay, practically I'm not so sure. Now this one is the same problem, but it sure has got a lot more entropy involved. It's not just the fracturing now of the crockery, it's the water, the coffee, the sugar, and the milk molecules are going everywhere. So we've got a shed load more. There is an exception to this story, and the exception is life is the only thing that creates negative entropy. We provide order in the universe. We take chaos and we turn it into order. Ergo, we are the producers of negative entropy. And negative entropy is one of the defining lives of a life form. In the grand scheme of things, life is absolutely insignificant, and so the entropy of the universe marches on at an incredible rate. Unless there was a lot more life in the universe, there would be no stasis. I don't know if you spotted the other day, but it was discovered that the acceleration of the universe, the measurements were wrong by about 30%, and the universe is actually expanding faster than we thought, and there's more of it as a result. At the same time, the very whisker of the first light from the Big Bang has also been detected. So our ability to actually reach out and sort of understand some of this stuff is actually accelerating. So we get systems that are totally closed, we get systems that are open, and we have to think carefully about how we tackle them. And so here is a very basic diagram of what we're looking at. We have some kind of engine. It can be a biological engine, it can be chemical, it can be electrical or mechanical, but we stuff energy in. The energy does some work, output, and there's some sink somewhere. So if you've got a sizable B, there's that damn reactor churning a huge amount of heat out. They suck seawater in and spew it out hot. It has to go somewhere. You either steam it off. This is the perpetual motion machine. It doesn't work. It's not going to, you know, this is my power sockets with a plug-in. You know, I think of it like this. If you've got a vacuum cleaner and there is a spinning motor in there, somewhere in the universe there is a spinning motor, the generator. For your spin, there's something else creating that. There's a prime mover somewhere. It doesn't just do it. So I'd really like you to remember this picture, because this says it all. The perpetual motion guys all do this. This is when you do an analysis of what they're doing. It's either a damn flywheel that's going to run down in a couple of hours, or a magnet that's going to get tired, or something like that. But that's where they are. So the way we get at entropy is to just simply look at this and say, well, the work output's proportional to the energy output, and energy in, energy out, there's the delta, and that's related to the temperature of the two, period. It's that simple. The energy is related to the temperature, and we just create this little equation. So it's worth noting that the entropy defines the energy available to do useful work. So another way of thinking this is an elastic band. If I grab hold of an elastic band, and I wasn't going to bring one, another demo for you, but you pull an elastic band, what happens is the polymers slide over each other, and the atomic forces are trying to pull it back. And so you've put energy in by putting tension into the elastic, and then it comes back in. So the way you store energy is to create disorder somehow. You put the energy in, create mayhem, and then you let it out. Exactly like blowing up this balloon. You fill it full of air, you let it out, you let it escape. And it's all on that principle. So the general formulation is a mathematical nightmare for a lot of people, but it's to do with the statistical analysis of this, and they do it with one molecule, which we hardly ever have the luxury of doing. We always get a much more complicated situation, and it turns out that we get these really interesting transitions from solid to liquid to gas, and they're quite distinct when they happen. And these are defined by temperatures for given materials. And what people do is forget the plasmas, where you rip all the electrons off and you destroy the atoms, because that's when everything breaks down, because it sort of does weird stuff, becomes very non-linear. And so plasmas start to get another scale of difficulty up. But basically, you've got solids, not much is moving, they're vibrating. Fluids, where there's a bit of space and it's moving around. And when you get to gases, there are vast spaces. I presume everybody is aware of the fact that the universe has a majority of nothing in the space. I mean, the space between the atoms that make us is huge. We are largely consist of nothing. All right, so it's a sort of interesting thought. So it's kind of interesting where all this sits. So here's where we started. So let's just be clear. Entropy is the relative distribution or change of energy. So you've got some change in energy there over a given temperature, and it goes to something like that. So you can integrate over an incredible space, and it's fairly trivial. And of course, if you've done maths, A-level maths, you'll recognize that the integral of that is a log function, and it looks like that. And that W term was introduced by Boltzmann, and the snag is I can't pronounce the damn name. Thank you, sir, whoever that was, well done. It's sort of neat, but this is the worst nightmare. If you can work through it. It's not going to kill you, but it's about another 4 slides worth of stuff to get down to the same equation. But this is saying, where is every particle in the system? What is the probability of each particle being where it is? This gives you the total entropy. And so what you do is you take a chunk of the system, model it in this way, and then apply it to the whole. So you get a microsystem that will represent the whole. So this was down to a gentleman called Gibbs, an American scientist. He was a mathematician and a scientist, and he solved the general integral of that pi function to come out like this. And this is the basis of information theory, and all the thermodynamic statements, they all look like this in one way or another. And so here are some statements of how it looks. Recognize that that is a quantized version of this. If you've ever wondered where that sign comes from, go down to the graveyard and have a look at gravestones around about 1700, and you'll find all the S's on the gravestones like that. So that is actually an S, meaning summation. That's where it comes from. But each one of these ultimately comes down to a very similar format. And the top one is that one, and that one is where the purists like to be, and it gets a bit more general down this side. So here's a conundrum. We live in a 4-dimensional world. That's a fraction of the theoretical 11-dimensional world, and we don't know what happens there, but what we do know is all of what I said fits inside the 4D world we live in, and it works. And the proof of the pudding is we can create such wonderful machines, both missiles, rockets, aircraft, but computing engines, communication systems, everything is based on this, and as a foundation it works. What happens when we get up to 11 dimensions is going to be interesting, but I'm going to give you a clue in a second with another demo. This is the best we've got. So Einstein thought this was the best formula in the universe next to his, and he loved it because of its profound nature and the fact that it could be derived in the way I've described from very simple thinking and just putting one step in front of the other. So some materials that are astonishing. When I was at BT, I had a whole group of people working on crystallography, and this whole area is just sort of magical. But you can't get a pure crystal, but if you could, it would have zero entropy if you got it down to absolute zero, which you can't do either. There are other things that you should be aware of, and this one, don't panic over. This is kind of funny, because I had an Indian gentleman who taught me this subject, and he had a very thick Bombay accent, and I can remember one day him causing total panic because he came in and said, "Gentlemen, you should know this thing, it is enthalpy." I spent all night looking up enthalpy, and this is what it was. Caused complete confusion. And it's not that complex, it's not magic, it's just all the energy in the system. And so the other terms you'll get in the papers and the books: endothermic, it's sucking energy in; exothermic, it's throwing energy out; adiabatic, it's not shifting energy one way or the other. So when I clouted this, I was putting energy in. When I lit this, we're releasing energy out of it. Okay, so you have to think in that context. I'm going to let you read this because it's a fun read. Just read it. It's not my quote. Just keep going. I just like the bottom line here. I think if you gave that answer in an exam, you get high marks. But this guy was tracked down. It didn't come from him. It's a bit of a spoof, but I just thought it was very funny. It's perhaps the epitome of how to tackle a problem. You start off with, nobody's done it before, which is where you get in engineering real quick. You get your education, you get your degree, you walk in, sit down at a desk, and they give you a problem you've never seen before. There are no books, there are no theories, and you're on your own. And so you have to start thinking differently, and I thought that was just a good example. So I ask all of these questions, and there are some interesting ones too, and I'll tell you the answer to this one. It is not possible for any life form to survive in its own waste material. It's never going to happen. Also, it's not actually possible for the human brain to understand the human brain. You ought to think about that. But all of these questions are worth asking. This one is, if you watch the movie The Martian, I think we spent, I took Jane to see this movie, I think we spent about 2.5 hours over supper picking all the holes in it, why it was all wrong and it couldn't work and he was going to die much quicker than that. It wasn't going to happen. So more seriously, there are questions like this. The top one is, no, our recycling systems do not work. In fact, most of them cost us energy. And it will be cheaper to burn all the oil than to try and recover it. Sorry, all the plastic. It'd be a lot cheaper to just burn it, look much more efficient. So we have to understand, and the snag is with all of this, our politicians haven't actually read or understand. I just put a note at the end on William Gibbs because he sort of impressed me. And then I got a demonstration. This is an experiment I want to try on you. And it may or may not work. I can't find a suitable video. But supposing you were living in a one-dimensional world, and this is what you could see. You're looking through one dimension. You would invent statistics to say, this is where the blue dots arrive and when, and you try and characterize it and you get averages and standard deviations and all that stuff. But if I gave you just one more dimension, you'd see that it was just a bunch of balls bouncing up and down. That's where we are. We see 4 dimensions, and the question is, what's in those other 11, if they do exist, what might we see? Because a lot of our stuff, like probability theory, to my mind, is a lack of an ability to see the other dimensionality of the problem, at least one more dimension. But we have no means of doing it yet. So if you look at the human brain, the people that think we can decode what the human brain is doing, look at it and say, well, there's an electrical propagation of a charge, or actually there is a chemical change that induces electrical propagation that radiates like a wireless signal at the same time, which is subject to quantum effects. We have no clue how all of those things interact. But when you get in there and you start digging down, you find people have forgotten all this stuff, and they're back to that row of sockets with a plug-in. And they're talking about perpetual energy and impossibilities. And if there's one thing that this will do, is help you stop, think, and say, is this a rational proposition? Am I taking the right approach? But probably most importantly, this problem is a waste of my time because it cannot be solved. And when you get into this, that's exactly what it gives you. So, if you go on here, there is the first cut of this slide set in my presentations. You can download it. When I get a moment, if I get a moment tomorrow, I'll put this latest version up, and it's yours. You can just take it you like. There is now an offer that you can refuse if, beyond the discussion we're about to have, something pops into your mind a week, a month, a year later. Email me and I'll do my best to answer. And if I don't know, I will tell you I don't know, because I've not done absolutely everything that you can do with thermodynamics. I've done quite a bit, but not everything. And if I don't know, I'll try and find out for you. If I really don't know, I'll say, don't know. It's still a mystery. There's some stuff that is really difficult to get your brain around, and it would be great if we could all be chemists and biochemists and cosmologists and everything else, but there's not enough time in a lifetime to do that. Okay, thank you for being a great audience, and we've got time now for questions if you would like to have a discussion. Sir.
Peter, that was really interesting, thank you. Around campus, our bins are positioned by estates and pairs.
Yes.
So there's a recycling bin on the left-hand side.
Yes.
And a refuse bin on the right-hand side. If that bottle of water, would you put it in the general refuse bin?
Well, I've been hounded so much by my wife that I put all the stuff in the correct bin.
You do. Why do you do that?
Because I hope that the human race will come to its senses and do the right thing at some point. And the reality is we don't have to have this stuff. We can have biodegradable plastics, but we choose not to. The most stupid thing that we're doing in this regard is taking a valuable material like oil and burning it. Oh my God. Without oil, we die. You know, it's responsible for a lot of our pharmaceuticals, but just about everything we make and use. And there are other ways of doing it. And so the answer is, the reality is, they don't deal with these cups. These tops, or this one's squeezy. The hard tops, you can't do much with them, but you can smash them up and use them as hardcore. It's cheaper to smash glass up and put it into the hardcore for Tarmacadam than it is to melt it down to recreate glass. It's cheaper to just go get sand and just do that. So thermodynamically, there's a lot of stuff that's happening that doesn't make any kind of sense.
So is this like the latter day equivalent of the perpetual motion machine as our fixation on recycling, despite the fact that it might make us seem sensible, but actually it makes no sense at all.
Political decisions crack me up, and my favourite this week is Donald Trump is putting a 25% embargo on the import of steel because those damn Chinese people are dumping all of their steel. It turns out the Chinese export virtually zero steel. They don't export hardly any steel into the US. It's a perception. So nobody checks facts anymore. Least of all, it would appear, politicians. So, sorry?
I was going to say, but he's a politician.
Well, that's it. So, my favourite quote last year was, we've had enough of the experts. We don't want to talk to experts anymore, all right. And there was one many years ago which was, and it was a terrific, I think it was a terrific Giles cartoon came out after, but one rather famous politician said, I don't know about all this education. I found that common sense just guided me through my life. And then the cartoon was a guy in surgery, and the surgeon's looking up and somebody says, has anybody got the common sense to take this appendix out? You know, and it's sort of, you know, it's just silly. And we've got a major problem. So I'll give you an idea. I've just proposed a research project here, PhD project here, and it is to create a truth engine. A truth engine. It sounds mad. It sounds mad. But you can, with the information we've got available, you can create a truth engine. I just need the student power to do it. And one of the problems I'm running into gradually is that a single student PhD is gradually becoming untenable. And we're going to have to go for team PhDs, because inside that subject you need an information theorist, you need a computer scientist, you need probably I don't know, somebody, well, biology, human behavior, journalist, whatever. But but here's the technique. It's ever so simple, like a lot of things. You go and take a news feed like the BBC, and you go back in time, as long as you like, and you look at an initial news report, and then you come back, you come towards the future, and at some point, that news report will be corrected, or proven wrong, or proven correct. And so you do this over and over and over and over again, and you come out on the present day with a percentage probability that a BBC news report is correct. What is more, if you go back 50 years, you can get statistics on, you know, the first and the second and the third moment, and you can say that it's getting worse with time, or it's constant, or what is it doing? And then you can go to Breitbart, and you find something that's truthful, and it's a surprise. But you can do this for media after media after media, and then, in true AI fashion, you can create an algorithm that says, here is a statement gauged against the ability to report accurately across a population of news feeds. How accurate are you? And by the way, one of the reason why it's going to be a multidisciplinary student, I need somebody who's good with plagiarism engines, because you get 5 people witness an event, you don't get 5 reports, you get 5,000. Because it goes out onto social media and it just multiplies, and with each click it gets distorted a little bit more.
Are you in contact with Diana Maynard at University of Sheffield, because this is the area that she's working?
No, but I would love to be.
Oh, I'll put you in touch.
If you could. Can I give you a card, sir?
I've already got the card.
Brilliant, okay.
I'm one of your fans for the last 25.
Oh, that's great. You embarrass me. So there's a whole bunch of things like this that we need to do. If we let go of the truth as a society, society collapses. Absolutely collapses. It's the route to the demise of our civilization. And certainly in science and engineering, we battle for the truth every day. And it's a bold battle. You know, for the last 23 years, I've been helping run a conference series in the United States where every speaker gets 10 minutes. After that, they're fair game. And every speaker that gets up, I say to them, you've got to do a reverse strip show, because if you don't start with the punchline, you ain't going to get to it. And you get attacked. You get quite vitriolic, determined attacks. But that's the nature of science, to challenge what people's perceptions are, what their scientific theories say. Do their statements hold up? And so, you know, you shouldn't get so upset you hang yourself, but you should be robust enough to take this and then shake out. Eventually we'll get to a better and closer truth. So this is an interesting game. I have been playing this game for well over 50 years, and it's just getting more exciting. It's great fun. Sir?
Another question, if you don't mind. I noticed that as you went through your coverage of thermodynamics in this, one of the things that seemed to be missing from the description was any notion of system boundaries, because you can get a whole different view depending on where you draw the lines of your system.
You can.
You claim, for example, that life has negative entropy, but obviously if your life creature is decomposing its foodstuffs
Yep.
in order to create order, then the net entropy is not necessarily negative.
I will slip you the £20 note later, but the second in this series is Systems 1.0, everything you should have known about systems before you started the course. Okay, so thank you. Totally, I can't get it all in the time, but I intend getting there. So,
Do we have any idea of how to prove these are
the answer to that is, at a quantum level we do, at this kind of level we don't. And I avoid several things like the plague. Mysticism, I don't go with the, guys, you know, it doesn't help. The whole mysticism, witchcraft, belief doesn't do anything. You just dissipate your energy on stuff that doesn't give any profitable outcome for mankind, apart from more superstition. So it's just, we're waiting for the test equipment, the scientific breakthroughs to do the measurements, to look at some of this thing. I never thought in my lifetime I would pick up, I never thought I would see an atom, and I never thought I'd pick one up and put it in another place. And I've seen one, and I've picked up an atom, and I've moved it to a different place. And that was a total shock, because I would never have thought that would have happened in my lifetime. But it has. And so when I look forward, it's easy to just say, well, we're doing this, so you'll be able to do all these things. That's the easy bit. What intrigues me is these surprises that are coming. You know, I guess what the Americans would call those holy shit moments, where, you know, something happens that's totally unexpected. You never saw it coming. And there's been several of those, and the number of them is increasing as I get older. You know, I can remember all the things I was taught. You know, you will never see a transistor being clocked at 100 megahertz. You know, by the time I got to my engine, and that was like in the second or third year of my 5-year course, by the time I got to my 5-year course, I got a 100 meg chip clocking away. So, you know, all the established wisdoms were destroyed because we were not looking at the full model. So people will tell you now that we're coming to the end of computing, because we're coming to the end of what silicon can do. We have got more materials capable of doing more than silicon do than we can shake a stick at. At the same time, we've got people making impossible claims about quantum computing. Well, I've had a look at a number of quantum computers. Quantum coherence is a dog to establish. Oops, this is not bolted down. I nearly had an entropic moment. And Google have just announced they're doing a 73 qubit machine. If that baby is stable, that's the game changer. Yeah, but you're not going to have a quantum computer to do Word. The rate the software is expanding, you might need one, but it's not. I mean, they're not for addressing that kind of problem. So the quantum computing just opens the door on this lot. It would allow us to model things to a degree that we've never been able to do or understand before. And in that modeling, there'll be new revelations, certainly. Any other questions or observations?
You mentioned that we can conceive of information storage as having entropy.
Yes.
I'm working in the smart cities field across a range of different layers.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I'm one of your fans is because you say things that make me think. Would you include a reference to the entropy of information storage in your slides when you put them up?
I can do if you like.
I
Yeah.
need to read into this because it's something
Yeah. We've always got this conundrum: do we put all the energy in one space, you know, or do we spread it out? Personally, I like my information spread out.
Yeah.
You know, so when I advise companies on security, I say to them, don't have a cloud, have 5. And take your information and tear it up and put it on 5 clouds for security reasons, because that's a dog. You know, you've got to break into 5 systems, know where it is, and then put it all back together. You can't do that. And you haven't got, here we go. A quick paper demonstration amid the broken glass. So this has got text on it. It's a classified piece of information, and I really want to hide it. So the first thing I do is chop it up. I parse it, and I would parse it in an irregular rather than a regular array. So I would encrypt that with one code, and I'd put it in a cloud. Then I'd encrypt this one with a different code and put it in a different cloud, and so on, and say to you, right, recover that lot and decode it. You might be lucky and get one, but you've got to get all of them, and you've got to get them in the right order, because the other thing I would have done was encrypt the whole lot in the first place, so that even if you do get them back, you've got to get them in the right order. That's a dog, you know.
So the poor old biologist in the audience whose brain is just on the verge of exploding. Okay. So it's your data.
Yeah.
That you encrypted.
Yeah.
Then you shred it.
Yeah.
And then you put it in shred in different clouds.
Yeah.
I'll buy it that the hacker after your secret information
Yeah.
is pretty damn stumped.
Yes.
What he reassures that is,
Can you get it
my
back?
data, can I get it back out and
Yeah.
contribute to the truth?
Yeah. You always need a backup plan. What people overlook, I mean, we're getting off the subject, but with the cloud, the biggest risk ain't the technology, it's the provider. If their server goes down, you have got no recourse in law to them losing your data. You have to read the small print. So they will lose all your data, you're totally ruined, you were a billionaire a week ago, now you're worth nothing, and you can't catch them on anything. It's written into the damn contract, so that's the biggest risk. So when you've done all of this, have a vault somewhere, deep in the earth, a bat cave, and hide it.
High true, high value bits of company secret information, like, say, for the sake of argument, recipe for Coca-Cola. Store, it's known only to a tiny handful of people.
Yeah.
And the only place it's actually written down on a piece of paper, it's stored in a
Fort Knox.
layers down in the basement.
Yeah.
One of the best, estates you can buy with
Yeah.
multiple armed guards on all the exits.
It's a lot of effort for sugar water.
What about artificial intelligence? Because surely if you can create algorithms to so much diff,
Yeah.
there's an algorithm you can create that retrieves this information.
Well, I've been with the 2 best teams on the planet, and IBM Watson and the Google guys. So here is, by the way, that's going to be lecture number 4. Okay. So thank you. I'll slip you some money as well. When IBM Watson started, it was a sort of puny 250 algorithms, and it's now about 500 and something. And we are a bunch of algorithms, by the way. So let me give you a sort of slight revelation of the human body. All the human, there's only way I can do this. All the human cells in your body are from about there to your foot. The rest of your body is made up of parasites. We're just made of parasites, okay? Now these, you like this. So these cells link together and they communicate. Each one of them has a tiny amount of intelligence. You get enough of them, you get us. And you get a sentient being. And we can do stuff. Now, there's a parallel there with AI. So 50 years ago, when AI started, it was, there's a telephone exchange. I bet that's how the human brain works. Oh, no, here's a computer. That's how the human brain works. Well, not quite. But the first mission for the AI guys was to make something that aped our ability. So I remember very vividly the arguments. Computers will never play chess, will never play a good game of chess, will never beat a human being, will never beat a grandmaster. So last year, the Chinese game of Go, which, by the way, has more combinations for the pieces on the board than there are atoms in the universe, was whooped by Google. How the heck did they do that? Prior to that point, the machines were doing things like deep learning. You know, you'd say, take photographs and you'd slide in men, you know, man, 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 woman, 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 man, man, which I actually worked on at BT, and it's kind of fun because you and I will look at somebody and say man, woman, because of masculinity and femininity. But when you look at an AI deep learning program and you unpick it, you find that it's detecting lipstick, mascara and whiskers. So and for me, that's a real plus. I like something that gets us to the answer by an entirely different mechanism. So there are programs in China, the US, and in the European Union where we're trying to recreate a human brain electronically. Brilliant. And here's been the bomber. You know, you've got something of the order of 10 billion neurons in here, and we've had chips with 100 million. Only recently has the transistor count started to exceed this. So you say, and this is one of the reasons for the breakthrough. We've now got the computing power to run the algorithms to actually overtake biological systems. So AI and robotics will now beat us at table tennis. The AI alone will beat us at any board game easily. No point learning chess anymore. They just wipe us out. That's simple. They do better diagnostics of human disease, ailment, and forecasting of treatment and outcome than we can. And people are getting all worried about it, but this is quite literally the biggest spanner we've ever been handed, you know. So my thoughts on this is, you know, if I come out here and say there's a screw loose there, you can use your fingernail, or you can get a screwdriver. It's a muscle amplifier. AI is an intellect amplifier. So if you take my laptop away, I'm dead. That's it. I can't do anything. AI will assume that position. We've exceeded the biological ability that we've got between our ears, period. So the question is what kind of partnership we're going to have, and you put your finger right on the button, because I want to embrace that. So when I was in BT with some of the guys in the audience here, the philosophy was we'd have every scientific and social discipline, and we would have every colour, creed, educational background we would get, male and female. We could never get enough female, never. But what I wanted was a third intelligence, and that was the machines. And so we started a 50-strong group in about 1990, and we developed AI, which actually became one of the founding pieces of the Internet Watch Foundation and other things. And we were able to create algorithms to control the BT network that doubled the capacity of the network for zero expense in hardware, because we could understand and forecast customer activity and where traffic was being routed. It's got much, much more advanced. So IBM Watson is really very powerful. Google is a bit more powerful. And I'll tell you the reason why. Up to now, what we've been doing is have human beings writing code. And when the Google team had a go, they wrote code. And eventually, they stood back and they let AlphaGo watch games of Go, and it learnt the rules. It then, in a very short time, played 30 million games of Go against itself, and then said, I'm ready to play a human being. 4 consecutive games with the AlphaGo black belt of the world, and it won every one. This is a break point. The break point is where we don't program the machines anymore. We don't even give them the information. We just say, what do you make of this? They watch, they observe, they derive the rules, and then they do some interesting stuff.
So how would an AI then realise it's made a mistake in a certain scenario?
We'll probably tell it.
If you can't correct it, if it's exceeded human ability?
People make mistakes all the time. So it may surprise you to know that the building codes for this building, the width of the door, where the fire escapes, have all been decided on the basis of killing people. We put up buildings, there's a fire, people die, we have a look at why they die, and we change the building code. Only just recently have we had the AI to run the evacuation processes for buildings and aircraft so that we don't have to suffer any more deaths on the way. So it was the case, I haven't got my mobile phone, I'll borrow Rita's mobile phone a bit. There was a time when we built things like this. There was an international drop test, which was 1 metre up on every corner onto a block of concrete. And if it survived, it was a product that we would sell. None of that is done anymore because it's done in software. Well, all of the processes where you get 350 18-year-olds in tracksuits and you open all the aircraft doors and say, get out, and say, that's fast enough. You know, everybody will get out. Excuse me, but there's a lady here with walking sticks. That's never going to happen. That's the sort of standard we've got. But with AI, what you can do, and it's magic because you can take the population. If a fire alarm goes off now, there's a bunch of guys and girls who'll run for the door. There's another bunch of guys who'll say, probably a false alarm, I'll wait a bit. And you know, you can put all the human behaviours in, and you can just run one Monte Carlo run after another, and you can get the behaviours, and it's a win-win for everybody. But human beings make mistakes. The question is, and this is an engineering maxim for me, when the machines make 10 times less mistakes than we do, they win. So once you've got an autopilot that has 10 times less crashes than real pilots, get the pilots out of there. And the same with cars. Okay, so, and it's a political fallacy that you can have a world that's safe. In fact, we should not build a world that's safe because we don't learn anything. You don't understand heat until you burnt your fingers. So you've got to have some practical experience. So
Peter, right back at the beginning, you commented on some of the luminaries
yes,
beneath the dawn of thermodynamics, and commented that these were individuals who had the facility to get their mind around
Yep.
physics, biology,
Yep.
music, poetry, whatever it was.
They were polymaths, yeah.
Broad in their capabilities. And I'm just wondering whether or not the sort of the future that includes AI is where the AI bit
Well,
is the
most
bit
likely,
in the box.
yeah. There are guys in this audience that I work with in BT, where each of us was a specialist in some sense, but we all understood what we were doing roughly. And then, one day I looked up and I thought, geez, I can't even remember how a transistor works now, because the transistors I did at university are entirely different to the ones that we've now got. And if I'm going to understand them, I'd have to sit down and study them for a couple of hours. And so if you look at something like a 777, no human being understands how a 777 works. No human being understands how a jet engine works. There's a guy who grows the vanes, and there's a guy who deals with the combustion chamber, and there's a guy that deals with the fan, and all that stuff, and it's got so very specialized. So my view of life is our species is becoming like that, delta functions. We know an infinite amount about nothing, whereas I know nothing about an infinite amount. So it's a sort of really interesting balancing act. But what I need is that thing to help me. So I don't very often do this, but I'm going to give you a shocking revelation. Not only do I not read books anymore, I will never read another book as long as I live. There is nothing in a book worth knowing, and mostly the books are wrong. So I resort to the latest research and development, and I read all the classics by the time I was about 20, early 20s. There's only 4 stories, And after that, they just change the clothing and the place and the accent, and that's it. So I've done all the stories, and so I'm trying to keep up. And what's desperate is this: I'm stood in front of not a fire hose. It's like a massive drain pipe of information gushing out. A new book is published every 13 seconds. Which one should I read? There is a scientific engineering publication, a professional publication, a paper published every 13 milliseconds. In my own field, if I was to sit down and read everything that was of interest to me in one specific slice of where I'm working, like security, and I didn't eat, and I didn't drink, and I didn't go to the toilet, and I never had a shower, and all I did was read, and I did it for a whole year, I'd be about 3 years behind. And big headlines, I can't cope. So what I'm trying to do is embrace the AI to help me find the stuff I should be reading. And so, like the truth engine, it would be great if we could rank the papers, the publications, because 99% of all the scientific papers are incrementally useless. They don't give me anything.
Have you read Extrand on recommender engines? One of the areas that we are looking at is how you can build a recommender engine for academic papers, MOOCs and videos and things like that, which give you a top 3 for the week.
That's what we need.
Yep.
Yep.
Extrand,
And here's a problem I have with Google. Google is both brilliant and useless at the same time. Absolutely useless. I type in something, it rushes off, and it gives me these 10 interesting references that are based on the rest of humanity. I don't care what everybody else is reading. In fact, I don't want to read what everybody else is reading. I want an AI engine on my machine that watches what I'm typing, what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what I'm communicating, what I'm reading, what I'm searching for, and I want it to bring up for me stuff that is pertinent to what I'm doing. That's what I need, because where I'm living at now is a nightmare. So
Okay, but there is an issue with that because
yes, there is.
things
Carry
like
on.
Pinterest do that, and what happens is you very quickly find yourself in a little echo chamber.
My wife over here has got a cunning plan, and her cunning plan is she makes friends with people she really dislikes. I mean, some of the people she absolutely hates, but she's made friends with them so that she gets their Twitter feed and she doesn't get sucked down the rabbit hole of being with all the people that think like you. And this it is an absolute delta function, strange attractor. It's actually a strange attractor. You get sucked in and you're with a group of people that all think like you, and it's great. It's a real buzz. Everybody's on my side. Well, no, this group are. And you do need the right amount of creative tension in your life. At the moment, I've got too much destructive tension in my life. I don't know how, I do not know how we get the balance right, but it's one of those things that, shall we say, it's work in progress. I have got a number of cunning techniques, one of which I will reveal, because I love the English. They are snobbish about everything. I will go to a drinks party or something and I'll say, have you read this book by Jack so-and-so? And I say, well, no. Oh, you should. And then I say, well, what's it about? They then give me a 15-minute précis and they've just saved me 5 hours of reading. And it's brilliant. So, I keep up with the general stuff, but seriously, we've hit a nightmare situation of so much stuff we can't cope with it. And last 2 weeks, my favourite line on all my email has been unsubscribe. I've been hitting unsubscribe on all the people that have got my email address from somewhere and decide to send me a deal at their hotel in some place or whatever it is they're trying to sell me. But you're dead right. The mechanisms pull us down one rabbit hole. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
I mean, there are from other fields, but you use approaches like simulated modeling, for example,
Yeah.
to add some energy into the
You can do that. Yeah, you can put noise in. But I don't want to do that. I'd like to have a product that I could use. So you get your product out, I will bite your arm off. The recommendation engine. I need your recommendation engine.
Oh, I'll point you at extract and Constantine in. I did a MOOC about 2
Okay.
years ago, and it is real. It is a real thing. May I ask another question?
Sure, go on.
When you talk about systems next week, will you talk about degradation of systems? Because one of the problems that I'm trying to think about for smart cities is how. Oh.
Why things fail? Yes. Did you guys think something else? Yeah. Why things fail and why things function? Yeah. Yeah.
If I've got part of my smart city systems which have died, been hacked, been disabled,
Yeah.
or are starting to give me defective information,
Yeah.
how can I trust the results I'm seeing from the rest of the system? Don't answer me this week. I'll come to you.
I'll do my best. So I've now got a question for all of you guys. I would like you to do something for me because this is an experiment. I would like to hear from you several things. Was this useful? Was it worth coming? Was the subject, what was the pitch? Did it feel about right? What could we have done better? Because if this formula works, we're going to run up 4 of these, and they will be, so the next one will be systems, after that will be information theory, and then it will be artificial intelligence. But there are lots of other subjects we can do. And what I'm trying to do is get off the stage. So I'm doing the first 4, but we've got people with capability who should be picking up one of this ball and running with it. Okay, so I've come in here to this university and made several observations. The way we teach is wrong, and we need to do something different. So this is part of the experiment. So the way we do research isn't working. It's not popular with industry. So I've got a new formula for that, but I'm all ears. My life is about fixing problems. And what we're up against is this. My first degree was 5 years. I had 40 hours staff student time every week. I had 1 day a week in the laboratory every week. I had quite long periods in industry doing projects when I was not at university. Now, undergraduates are faced with a 3-year course with 19 or 20 hours of contact and no laboratory work. How can that possibly equip them for a future? Well, it can't, but with the aid of this stuff, I do believe we can do a better job. So I'm not doing any systems courses yet, but the plan is for me to do a whole series of system courses from A to B. The systems lecture will be like this, roughly. The system courses I'm going to teach by doing that kind of stuff, but I'm going to have 3 laptops, one here, one there. And I'm going to actively build a system live in front of the students and demonstrate it. And then the homework assignment is, here's a system you've never seen before, go home, build it, here are the 5 apps you need, tell me what you get. Okay, if we're not going to get the direct staff student time that it is necessary to do good science and engineering, we will use a different technique. So the PhD students that are hopefully coming to me as I get my act together is going to be a mixture of lectures and traditional PhD stuff, and it starts by, here are 4 lectures in 3 different MOOCs. Go watch those, then we'll have a discussion, and then we'll start. But so far, my first 3 proposals, 2 of the students are going to work in Silicon Valley, and 1 is going on the island of Jersey. So my mission here is to cook some employment-ready students. The deal is really good. It's the longest job interview on the planet, because they're going to spend 3 years close in with an engineering or a scientific team, and so that company, that group, will get to know them, and they will most likely get a job if they want it. But if they don't, and they spin round into a postdoc, they come with some industrial relevance. Because in my view, the connection between academia and our society at all levels is not strong enough in the UK. It's very easy to cycle in and out in the US. It's damn hard here. So let me give you one more funny, okay, and then we probably should call it a night. So I'm now an advisor to Facebook. So next week, I'm working for Facebook. My boss is 30 years old. How cool is that? How cool is that? Thank you very much indeed.